I'm Svetlana. I'm the director of the Russian Center for Science and Culture in Kuala Lumpur. The main goal of our center is to promote cooperation between Malaysia and Russia, the friendship between our peoples. Where does friendship begin? I believe that friendship begins with mutual understanding, so that you can better understand the Russian soul. Today we are going to tell you about a historical date which is so dear to all of us. The 27th of January is the day of the complete liberation of Leningrad from Nazi blockade. Now Leningrad is called St. Petersburg. I'm sure many of you have heard or even visited this amazingly beautiful city, the cultural capital of Russia. But 77 years ago, this city was exhausted by Nazi invaders who besieged Leningrad for 872 days. They blocked the delivery of food and water to the city. They constantly bombed the civilian population. But the Nazis failed to break the people. This city remained undefeated. This is a very important date for us, and we are proud of Leningraders. In Russian we call them blockadniki. And we have grandchildren and great-grandchildren, one of blockadniki women, here in Malaysia, in our community. And today I think they will be able to explain you what this historical event means for Russians.
Hi, my name is Vasily Baranov. I am from Russia, St. Petersburg, and this is my son, Vasily. Today we would like to talk to you about one of the most dramatic pages in the history of our country and our city, about the siege of Leningrad. And why we would like to bring this to your attention, because on the 27th of January, it's the day when we remember all our family members who were really affected by this tragic page in history. We have two grandmothers in our family who survived this siege. And as you know, to survive this siege was actually a very, very big thing. Why? Because nearly 800,000 civilians died during the 900 days of the siege, driven by starvation, frozen to death, or under the bombs of Nazis who were bombing the city all the way. We have two grandmas. My grandma Masha, as we called her in the family, she was really bringing me up. And then also my wife's grandma Nadia, who lived a very long and glorious life. She actually died in 2017 at the age of 94. And she was actually bringing up my son, Vasily, and he clearly remembers her. He will tell you the story of Grandma Nadia. My Grandma Masha, when the siege has just started, was just a student in one of the universities in Leningrad. She was 25 years old. And then once the siege started in September 1941, first thing Nazis did, they bombed the warehouse with food supplies. It was completely burned down, and that immediately brought down the ration for civilians into a very, very thin numbers. As you probably know, only 125 grams of bread was the normal food that the common civilian had during that time. My grandma was asked to join the fire brigade. She was really serving on the rooftops of city buildings, trying to bring down the fire bombs that Nazis were throwing into the city, destroying the buildings. But very soon, after a few months, driven by starvation, because this 120 grams every day was obviously not enough, she really became extremely weak. She was telling me later that during these days they were eating anything that was eatable. Even the pets were all basically eaten by the civilians, and then even those parts of the clothing, like for example the belts, which were made of natural skin. They boiled it, and they were just drinking this broth of that, just because it had some nutrition in it. Yeah, it was really very very dramatic moment. And then obviously at that winter 1941, the temperatures dropped really tremendously to negative 30s, and the city was completely frozen because Nazis cut down the supply of power to the city. And in fact, the fact that I'm talking to you right now is thanks to a very slim chance that my grandma had to survive. The only way to survive back then was to escape the city, and the only way to escape the city was through one very small road that the civilians were calling the Road of Life. This road was built on the ice of the Ladoga Lake, which is near the city, that is connecting the city territory to the mainland of Russia. And it was only possible during winter, and it was extremely risky, because obviously not everywhere the ice was thick enough to hold the van, and this road was bombed by Nazi bombers all the way. So my grandma told me that when they finally herself and her student friends managed to get onto the van and go to this Road of Life, when they were just crossing the lake, the van in front of them drowned, went down under ice, because just before that the bombers were bombing it and made lots of cracks in the ice. So as you can imagine, it's a very slim chance and extreme luck that my grandma was not in that van in front of her, but in a van that was behind. And then when she finally managed to get across the lake, and her sister on the mainland was meeting her there. In fact, her sister just at first couldn't recognize her, and she was really refusing to acknowledge that was Masha, because she didn't look like herself. She was only 25 years old, but then her sister thought that, oh no, that's not Masha, because this is just a very old woman, maybe in her 70s. And that is the immediate effect of starvation. When there's for a long time a lack of food, a human being becomes really looking extremely old. And then for the rest of her life in our family, it was really very precious. Every single piece of food, piece of meal was extremely precious. And until the end of her life, and she lived also very glorious and long life. She died in 2003 at the age of 88, and she was always making food reserves. That I remember very clearly. Food reserves just for any chance, that like small dry foods everywhere, including even her bed. She was trying to keep some candies and cookies there. That's how deep the trauma was of that particular few months of this severe winter that she survived. So that's the story of my grandma Masha, and I would like to pass on to my son Vasily, who is going to tell you the story of another grandma Nadia, grandma of my wife, his mother.
So Grandma Nadia, I remember her very well because she babysitted me, and like she always was playing with me when I was little. And as my father said, she passed away in 2017 at the age of 94. So yeah, she was only 17 when the actual Leningrad siege happened. She She only survived because she, in her apartment, was the only left sauna in the whole Leningrad. For a living and to get food, she had to work at a ammunition factory, and every day she had to walk 10 kilometers one way to get to the factory, and she only got a very small amount of food. So she was very lucky to have survived all the 900 days without leaving the actual Leningrad city.
Yeah, that's definitely another deep story of the family. As Vas mentioned, Grandma Nadia worked the entire 900 days in a factory producing ammunition, and walking 10 kilometers one way was not a walk in the park, because snow or rain under the bombers of Nazis, it was extremely risky. So she was very lucky as well to survive. But I think what we would like to bring to your attention is that the war itself is the worst and the most tragic and dramatic thing that can ever happen to humanity. And we all, the young generations, have to remember all these horrors of the war. And these horrors of the war are not just, for us at least, pages in a history book. This is very deep in our families. And we have to live our lives to make sure that these things like war can never happen again. Thank you very much for your attention.
Чтоб снова на земной планете не повторилось той зимы, нам нужно, чтобы наши дети об этом помнили, как мы.